Hello, this is Tabitha Purple. Today we are looking at My Bibles. We're continuing our series. This is, I think, number 4, but we have other ones to look back on if you haven't seen, and we'll have some more in the future. Today's Bible that we're looking at is the New Living Translation. I'm going to pick up my pink version. I have 3 versions of this Bible, very, very different, so I will be taking you through those. The New Living Translation is by Tyndale. And so for those of you that know Bibles know that this is a huge company. This is the big name in Bibles, so it's one of those. The translators for this, where is it predominantly based? Well, again, we have to struggle with whether it's a US based one. It's based within the US, Canada, English, Australia, and tends to have people within the English language groups doing this. I will do a Dutch translation at some point, but not today. Okay, the methodology. Now, this one's really interesting. So the methodology for this is quite fascinating. So what they say is that there are 2 main methodological choices. Whew, say that in a hurry, right? There's the formal equivalence or the dynamic equivalence. And basically, if you have one that is purely those, they're at either end of the spectrum. And what the NLT seeks to do is to do a more meaning-based translation, but have it somewhere in the middle of those 2. They try to use both where they can, the formal equivalent, so the literal word for word translation where possible, and where not possible, where there could be a slight meaning change. So for example, in terms of gender, that's one of those issues. So respecting the ancient context is what they say, while bridging the gap to modern readers. And so where it's clear that they may have said men while referring to men and women in a congregation, they will try and use that. So that's an idea of how they're actually doing the translation. Some people think this is not as strong a translation. I would tend to disagree with them. I think that really does depend on what you're looking for. And one of the goals of this text is that it would communicate clearly, powerfully to today's readers as the original text did to the readers and listeners in the ancient biblical world. Now, this is really important because, of course, we know that a lot of these texts are handed down word for word or are meant for the oral tradition. They're meant to be read aloud. And so that aspect of actually being for the ear as well as for the reading aspect is really important. And so I think that that really does give an extra I can't say the word. It gives extra dynamic interest to the text that they're doing. What they suggest is that the NLT is good for study, a devotional reading, and is good for reading aloud in worship. And this is something that I think Christianity could benefit from. The idea that we should read aloud in our worship services, actually read the scripture, huge portions of the scripture as well, not just have preaching, but actually have reading of scripture and dynamic reading of scripture is something that we would all benefit from. I think we're used to this kind of one text, one verse, one line. But if you take any line of a person's speech or a person's book, you can manipulate it and make it say something. So the idea of having it read in context, in a total paragraph, is really helpful. So I think that's really interesting. So the question becomes, what is my experience of the Living Translation? So I have 3. From the NLT, I have 3 NLTs, and I've kind of stuck with them for a while. This one, you'll see this is my case that I have to keep this one in. It is a black life application. I have a pink girls life application, and I have the Life Recovery Bible, which is a totally different version of the text. And then what I have is this little thing which is called a Living Bible, which is not the same family, but people get mistaken. So my personal relationship to this, or my personal way of reviewing this, is to say I actually found this a really great bridge. And when I grew up on the King James, and then there was the Good News, and there was the NIV. And the NLT was a great dynamic text for me to move beyond that world, because when I was growing up, like NIV, it was NIV versus KJV, it's the King James Version versus the New International Version when I was growing up. And I just remember people would have these really big arguments, and to a certain degree they still do, between these two versions. And when the NLT came along in my life, now there's been 3 versions, that's really important to note. So I think they were done in, let's see, 96, 2004 and 2015. I won't say which was my first version of those. We won't let on. But so it's been updated and it's been kept modern, and kept in keeping with the readership and what their aims are. But when I first came into contact with this, I really had this epiphany kind of moment that the text should be dynamic and it should be understood. And I also got introduced to it through the study Bible aspect. And so this was one of my first study Bibles. In fact, it was my first study Bible. And then when I was going to university to study for ministry, this became one of the study Bibles I took with me. And, people disparaged whether it was a good translation or not, but I loved it. It helped me to keep up with my classes. It helped me to keep up with some of the terminology that people in school were using that I maybe didn't use in my regular church life. And it helped me to kind of bridge that gap into the world of commentaries and exegesis and different kinds of studies. So for me personally, this was a really great translation, and it really helped me, especially the book, the actual Bibles that are produced around it, helped me to bridge the world of academics and regular folk, if I say it like that. And I think that when we talk about studying the word, I think there is a world to be given to the bridging aspect that has to be done between the academic study, which can go down to these fine, minute things and really tiny words and dots and I's, and really can get into the real minutiae of it, and to the everyday person who's studying and learning in their church setting, and what does that mean for them. And so I think that that's just really important to have that bridge. And for me, the NLT was that bridge. It was a Bible that I used as a bridge. And as you know, I like to find the positive in my translations. So I did mention the Living. And I mentioned the Living deliberately because a lot of people mistake the Living Bible for the New Living Translation. And the Living Bible edition is a paraphrase. And this paraphrase was a personal paraphrase, and it was by Kenneth N. Taylor, and the paraphrase was taken from the American Standard Version, so it's a very Americanized version. But why do I mention this? I mention this because it was the first time I really got into the story of the Bible, and that's something that I think people miss. The Bible is a story from Genesis to Revelation, and the whole thing wraps up and ties up in Jesus. If you've watched the Bible Project, you'll have that phrase very well in your phrase. The Bible is a story that leads to Jesus, the fulfillment of all of the text. So you'll have that in your head. But it really is a story, and it tells a story of real people. It tells a story of real lives. It tells a story of a God who's trying to communicate with us in various ways. And so I think that when I found this little Bible, my mother got me this one. I absolutely loved it. I just looked at the date of when I received it. It was something that really taught me about the story structure. So when I got the New Living Translation now, and it was a translation, it didn't have the kind of dynamic storytelling element that a paraphrase has, because a paraphrase really is about telling the story and getting the story across, which is wonderful and interesting and keeps you on the edge of the seat. But what it did have is this ability to bridge two worlds for me. I was in the academic world and I was in the regular church world, and I needed those two bridged. How do I take what I've been learning in classes and use it in everyday language and help enhance the work of the church? And I think that the New Living Translation helped me to do that. I must admit, I haven't used 2 of them for a very long time, because as you know, I use daily. Every year I pick a new Bible translation. So these have been off the translation list for a while, but there is one of them, the Life Recovery Bible, which I was really digging into a couple of years ago, because it really spoke to the churches I was attending, pastoring and working in, and it spoke to the needs of the people. And I felt like it had really great principles. So I'm going to show you the Bibles so you get a sense of what they're like, and then we'll wrap up for today. So let me see. Okay, I hope you can see this. So I have a cover for this Bible. I will tell you that this cover used to be my makeup bag. That used to be my travel bag to put all of my toiletries in, and it's really robust and it's waterproof, and I needed something that would protect this Bible because I love this Bible, and so I used this. This is the original cover. It's a life application. You can see it's a life application study Bible. It's a red letter edition. It's by Tyndale, and it has everything you would expect in it. This is one of the, I guess, the most standard and fastest selling. I recently bought an upgrade because some of the pages are now beginning to fall out. So as you go to the back, you'll see it's very well worn, and there are loose pages and lots of pages coming out. You can see there's a reason why I put it in a can you see that there? I've got a little watermark there. There's a reason why it is in a waterproof case. This is a well-loved and well-used Bible. It really does give a really great commentary under there as an introductory commentary. I found it really useful to get into the beginning stages of really developing what theology was, what study was, what exegesis was, learning about the actual kind of links to the old literature. It gives this kind of these really great overviews that help us to understand what's been happening in Christianity, let's say. So this is in the Galatians, and it does some really great linking. You can see I've already got I had many more post-its in it, but I've removed them to preserve this Bible because I do love it. I do love my life application. It puts the maps in, which I like. So there are maps at the end, which you can see have been well used and are falling out, but it does actually give you the little maps where relevant to help you to chronicle where you are in the story, which is really helpful. So this is the life application. This is the life application. This is the main life application. So I'm going to tuck that one away because it's very precious to me. I want to tuck that one away. This is the girls version. Now, I love brightly coloured Bibles. I love to have something that's a bit more reflective of my personality, and this is one of the few that I have that actually does that, unless you get into the journaling world, and then you can go a little bit more wild. But this was my first foray into a Bible that looked like something I wanted to carry, looked like something I wanted to use. I remember people saying, oh, but it's a girl's Bible, blah, blah, blah. I loved it. I really loved it as a young person. I absolutely adored the stories, the extra additional pink highlights. I love all things colour. It doesn't have as much as the obviously main study Bible, but it does have all these little nice stories to help you travel through the Bible. It has great introductions to give you an overview. It does go through, and it has the timeline. So it's nice if your child, teen, or a young person is looking for a Bible, I think, and you're interested in something that's got some serious elements, and this has some of that. So it talks about the food, the marriages, the types of things that people would eat. It has real cultural significance in there, but it's done in a way that's quite engaging. I liked it. I'm sure there's somebody who's given this Bible a terrible review and absolutely hated it, but I must admit I've even preached out of this Bible, much to, I'm sure, the horror of some people. But the text is really clear and easy to read. And so, although it is the double column, I grew up with double columns. I've grown into, of course, I love single columns, but I grew up with double columns. This was a really clear text. The pages are thick enough that you can turn them over quite easily without getting stuck. I found them, it's just very easy to use. So I absolutely loved this one. And that made it easy to preach from. So I have used it frequently in sermons. So that's this one. But this is the one I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking to you about. This is the Life Recovery Bible. And the Life Recovery Bible, I've got the large print edition. I must admit it was on sale. It wasn't even a deliberate effort to get the large print. I started doing some of the Bible studies. You can see I've already highlighted the page ends. If you're a Bible journaler, you'll recognise this. So this tells me that there's a new book here. That's a new book of the Bible, so I can find it easy enough. Don't know why that particular page is sticking, but there you go. And in this particular one, you do get quite a lot. Again, you'll see that in some places it's single column, some places it's double column. You do get the text at the bottom, the kind of commentary. You do get the introductions. But what you get in this Bible that I absolutely have to be honest, I adore, is that it takes you through the 12-step program. And the reason I love this is because the 12-step program was originally a Christian program and based on Christian principles, but it takes it through in such a way that it's just so usable as a church. If you're experiencing a difficult time, you know, it doesn't even have to be about addiction. It's just about recovering your life to God. And it has all these different devotional reading plans, recovery profiles, introductory material for the Bible books, Bible commentaries, articles. It's so full. And to be honest, this Bible had me lost in study. Like I recommend it highly if you're a person that just likes to dive in. I have to be honest, I love the large print. Maybe I'm showing my age, I don't know. But I love the large print. It really helped to study it and help to read it quite easily. And surprisingly, although it's a tall book, it's not a particularly thick book, which is surprising for the amount that you get in here, including all of the steps and all of the devotions and all of the extra bits. It was really just quite good. So I think what I want to do is read a bit of the scripture, because of course I do that every time. So I'm going to read a bit of Genesis so you can get a sense of what it's like to read it, and bear in mind that this Bible is written with that auditory aspect in mind, that there will be listeners. So this one says, "Then God said, let lights appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them be signs to mark the seasons, days and years. Let these lights in the sky shine down on the earth." And that is what happened. God made 2 great lights, the larger one to govern the day and the smaller one to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set these lights in the sky to light the earth, to govern the day and night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And evening and morning came, marking the 4th day. So there you go. It's really, I find it's really intuitive. And it sticks to some of the formulas that you'll be used to in your Bible, but it gives you just a different way of reading it. Very personable. I enjoy it. You have to I've read Genesis 1,000,000 times, so I have to be careful not to just do it from memory as I'm reading and to actually read what's on the page. But that was Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 to 19. So there you go. These are the NLT versions. As I said, for me, it was great bridging. I hope that you find these useful and that these Bible commentaries are useful. If you do want me at any point to go through a particular individual specific Bible from one of the series, because I just do the series and then show you different versions of the series, then please do let me know, because I can do an individual one on these series. Okay, well, have a good one and we'll see you soon.